Hey guys, welcome. Today we are going to be talking about how to get started with your new Demi Colour makeup. I know how it can feel a little bit overwhelming to receive all your new makeup in the mail and you stare at it and you're like, what do I do now? What do I do with this? It's such a new way of doing makeup that's literally never existed before, so give yourself some grace. It's okay to be overwhelmed. I was super overwhelmed when I first received my makeup too. So it's totally natural, but we need to power through that and we need to practice and we need to learn how to use our new makeup because the payoff is just so worth all your time and effort, I promise. So I'm going to be walking you through the steps for how to do a face with Demi, and I'm going to demonstrate on myself and show you how I created this makeup look today. So I'm going to show you how to do this. Okay, so first things first, when you get started with your Demi, the first thing you're going to want to do is sculpt, do your sculpting and your contouring of your face and your blush. Any sort of adding of color that you want to do to your face first. I always recommend that you do that first so that when you get to the point where you're going to start filtering out distractions, you actually know what you're working with and you're not going to be changing the colors later by adding colors, if that makes sense. So if you plan on doing any sculpting and blush, do that first. Then we will move on to neutralizing distractions and the things about your face that you would like to not have to look at. All right, filtering out distractions. Let's get started with that. That is the most important part about Demi, and that's where the magic is. So the first thing you're going to want to do is look at your face. You have to learn how to spot colors in the skin. This can take a little bit of practice. It definitely did for me. I think a lot of people look at their face and they think, I have a lot of redness in my cheeks. Actually, that's probably excess violet. A lot of people look at their under eyes and say, oh, my under eyes are so purple. Really what people are seeing when they see purple is excess blue. So it's that kind of thing where you have to really fine tune your eye into learning what colors look like in the skin. Once you learn it and you see it, you will never be able to unsee it. I mean, I'm in public all the time looking at people's skin going like, oh, that's green. I would put pink on that. Like imagining what I would do with Demi on other people's skin. I know that's really creepy and weird, but the point is that once you learn how to spot color in the skin, you will always be able to see it and it will become second nature completely. So I know it's difficult at first. It was for me too. The hardest color for me to ever see was green. And then I started seeing green in my skin and I realized I have a ton of green in my skin and now I cannot unsee it. So it does get easier. You just have to practice a little bit. But the first thing you need to do is to just look in the mirror, look at your face, and try to learn your own face and look at the things and the distractions on your face, the things that your eyes are really drawn to, the things that you want to hide, the things that you would normally try to cover with your makeup. What do they look like? What does the color look like? If you have trouble figuring out what color things are in your face, you can let me know and I'll help you. But that is the first step. Step number 2, you need to pick 3 things on your face that you would like to filter away. So 3 things when you look at your face that is very distracting. Like if you have a really big blemish, that would obviously be one. That's usually really drawing our attention if you look at that. So a blemish, redness anywhere on your face, rosacea, darkness under your eyes, melasma, skin discoloration anywhere. Those are the things that you need to look at. You need to pick the 3 that you want to hide the most. And the reason I say that, there might be more than 3 things that you want to hide, but the reason I say that is because we don't want to be completely overwhelmed. Let's just deal with 3, get started, and then after those 3 are dealt with, then you can move on to some other things. You also might find that once you remove those 3 distractions, you might not even notice any other distractions on your face, because when you start looking at your face in the beginning, it might look like, oh, there's so much wrong that I want to cover. But really, once you start removing them, then all of a sudden it doesn't look so bad. You might want to just leave it. So just start with 3 things. Step number 3, pick one area that you want to filter. Within that area, look for the darkest points. Anything on the face that's larger than a sesame seed is going to be more than one color. It's not going to be just one color. So what's really helpful to do is find the darkest point within that area and start there. Also, a lot of times what happens is a dark spot will give the illusion of an entire area looking dark. If you remove the darkest point, it actually changes how the entire area looks. So what you need to do is remove the darkest point first and then reassess and see where you're at. Now that you've identified the darkest point in an area that you'd like to filter with your Demi, you need to choose a Demi shade to use to filter that spot and neutralize it. So what you need to do is you need to look at your color wheel, find that color of your skin on the color wheel, and go to the opposite side and choose the complementary color. So for example, if you have a really angry red blemish, you'll probably need to use something with green in it to neutralize that red. If you have some rosacea, that's probably excess violets, you'd probably want to use a yellow toned demi shade to counteract that violet. So that is what you need to start doing, is choosing the shades. A lot of times it just takes a little bit of memorizing if you don't know your complementary colors, but it will stick in your brain eventually. And then you're going to take a small brush, the same size as the area that you're trying to spot correct. Small brushes are usually the way to go. Get a teeny tiny bit of Demi Colour on your brush, minuscule amount. And then you're going to very lightly touch the spot on your face, and then the color that you're trying to neutralize should just disappear. It should look more like you're actually wiping away the distraction rather than covering it with color. You don't want to use too much product or it won't have the same effect. Then the spot that you're trying to neutralize should just disappear. If it doesn't, if it looks ashy, if it just turned a different color, that usually means that you're either using too much product or you need to use a different Demi Colour. So sometimes it can take a little bit of trial and error. You might need to wipe off what you did and try again.
Hi, Mommy. Hi.
Come here, baby. Hi, did you wake up from your nap? Okay, well, I'm almost done anyway, so we're almost done anyway, so you can join me. Say hi.
Hi.
Mom life. Anyway, moving on. What I was going to say next is that once you neutralize an area, then you can reassess the situation and move on to the next distracting thing, and then the next distracting thing until it's not so distracting anymore. One of the keys with Demi is learning when to stop as well. You don't want to have a completely colorless face. You don't want to just remove every single thing about your face that makes it interesting. You just want to remove the distracting things so that your natural beauty can shine through. On my face, I still have a lot of imperfections and spots on my face, but they're not bothering me. So I'm going to leave them alone. And that is key. Okay, enough explanation. Let's get to the demonstration. So I'm going to show you how to take all of those steps in practice and actually do Demi on the face. So here we go. Okay, let's get started and do my makeup. I'm going to first start with sculpting and blush because you always want to add color to your face before you start neutralizing or brightening any areas, just so you know what you're actually working with when you start to do that, so you're not having to redo things. So we are going to do that real quick. If you need help with either of those things, with sculpting or blush, I have a separate video all about that. So let's just do it. Okay, so now we have our sculpt on and our blush, so now we're ready to start neutralizing some distractions on the face and filtering out some of the excess color that we don't want. So I'm going to be using primarily my spot brush and my bright brush. These are the two smallest brushes. You want a brush that's not bigger than the area that you're trying to filter out. So you want to use smaller brushes typically. Think spot concealing. That's kind of what we're going to be going for here. So I'm going to pick 3 things on my face that I want to try to hide or remove, things that bother me. So for me, that would be this red area around my nose. I have some broken capillaries here. I have some darkness under my eyes here. And then I have a couple little blemishes and spots like acne scars that I want to remove from around my face. So that is where I'm going to start. So the first thing I'm gonna do is around my nose right here. So a lot of people would look at this and think that it's red, but actually it is excess violet because there's a lot more depth to this red. It's actually a few different colors. So right up off my nostril here and down in the crease here, you see how it's darker? That's more of a blue violet here. So I'm going to use an orange yellow to take care of that. So I'm gonna have my palette here. I'm just gonna barely touch the color with my brush, if you can see that. I'm barely using any color at all. And I'm just gonna lightly feather touch those areas that I want to add this color to neutralize it. Think of it more as that you're trying to actually wipe away the distraction that you're filtering rather than you're not trying to cover it with makeup. We're not using the opacity of the makeup to do anything. We're using the colors to change how we see it. There's a big difference. Now the area down here is a little bit more of a violet red shade. So I'm going to use yellow, but with a tint of green to it. So it's green yellow. I barely have any color on my brush and I'm just lightly touching the area that I want to remove the excess color from. Look what a big difference that made. I barely have any makeup on there at all. If you're trying to do this and you find that it's coming out chalky or it's just not getting rid of the color or something like that, it probably means that you either are using too much actual product or you have the wrong color. One of those two things is usually what that means. Okay, so I've gotten rid of those broken capillaries around my nose somewhat, so now I'm going to move on to the next thing. So next, I think I'm going to address some of these blemishes that I have right here. Blemishes, I think a lot of people think that they need to use green on blemishes because they look red, but really I've discovered that most of the time, the only time you would need to use anything green is if it was a really angry, vibrant, inflamed red, like a fresh zit that you just messed with. That you might want to use green on, but the rest of it, you probably most likely need to use yellow to neutralize any excess violet. And as the blemishes heal, they tend to turn more into like a little shadow of an acne scar, and that means that there's a lot more blue in it. So it's like they go green, excess violet, excess blue as they heal. So you need to use different colors as they're healing. So I have to reassess these spots every time I do this. So I'm just going to dot around my face with yellow, yellow green, yellow orange, or orange, depending on the color of the blemish or the spot. And I'm just gonna get rid of a bunch of zits and acne scars. Okay, I think I got all the little spots that I want to remove. As you can tell, my technique is that I take a little tiny bit of product on my spot brush and I dab it exactly and precisely where I need the color to go. And if I have a little excess product or it's not perfectly blended in, I like to just flip it around to this fluffy side and just sort of pat or just lightly fluff around the area, and it should just diffuse the color nicely. And like, for example, with this blemish right here, I got rid of the excess violet at first, and then it was still a little dark spot. And if it's dark like that, it means there's blue. So I added a little bit more orange just to make sure in the center that I was getting all of that darkness. But yeah. Now we are going to move on and get rid of some of this discoloration under my eyes really fast. I have a whole other video on brightening your under eye area because that is a pretty complex area that most people like to focus on. So if you want a more detailed explanation of how I do this, go ahead and check out that video. I'm gonna go ahead and just take care of that. Okay, so I'm done with my 3 areas that I really wanted to deal with on my face. And I mean, I love how it turned out, but I do have a couple other little things that I like to address. So now that I'm done with those 3, I can move on to the next thing. So I want to get rid of this melasma right here on my forehead. So I'm going to use some pink and some violet pink to get rid of that like earthy green that I have right here. It looks brown, but it's actually a green. So I have a lot of that here. So I'm going to use pink and violet pink to get rid of that green and yellow green that I have in my melasma in a few places. Okay, so that's it. I'm done sculpting, adding blush. I've neutralized all the things about my skin that I don't like, that I wanted to hide. And I'm really pleased with how it looks. I think now it's just time for some finishing touches. So I'm going to do a little bit of extra brightening in the areas that I would normally add illuminator to really make my features pop. So I'm going to take the fluffy side of my brush and just use a little bit of, you can use violet right here, or you can use, like, I like to use this BV one, this blue violet a little bit sometimes. It's a little bit more icy colored. But I just take a teeny tiny bit of that on my brush and just put this on the high points of my face where I would normally add illuminator. And it just really, it's like natural illuminator. It just really brings the light to those areas. I'm gonna do the same thing with this lavender color on my brow bone and the inner corners of my eyes. Watch what magic this does. Look how bright my eye looks now. Isn't that amazing? Now I'm just gonna add a little bit of Demi eyeshadow. And lastly, I'm going to add a little bit of Demi to my brows just to fix them up a little bit. Now I'm just going to add a little bit of color to my lips. And a final step, that's optional. I'm going to take a little bit of the gloss with my finger and just add it to my lips. My lips are pretty dry, so it's nice to just have a little moisture. And then I'm going to take the balm and add that to the places that I brightened with my illuminating color, and it just gives a radiance to the skin. That looks natural. It looks like you just have really dewy, moisturized, beautiful skin. And that's it. This is my full face of Demi, but that is the process for how I go about applying the color. Hopefully that helped you a little bit today and helped it be a little less overwhelming so you can at least get started with your colors. A lot of Demi is trial and error. I mean, I feel like it took me a while to figure out how to spot colors in the skin so that I would know which color of Demi to use. So oftentimes I would use the wrong color and I would figure it out the hard way. But once I learned it and I figured it out, it clicked. And now it's second nature. I can do my whole face quickly, you know, and the colors in my face change all the time, but I can tell the difference with the colors with my eye. So I know which colors to use to really bring out my complexion. So it will get easier, it will get faster. Trust me, you just need to put in a little bit of time to figure it out, figure out your own face, figure out what looks good on your face, and you'll be able to do this in no time. If you have any questions, if you're having a hard time figuring out what colors are in your face, if you have a specific area that is just not filtering away, that you're just not sure what color to use, if you're really struggling, just let me know and I will try to help you troubleshoot that and figure out what the problem is. And we can figure it out together, I promise. Thanks so much for tuning in. And as always, if you have any questions, let me know and I'll see you next time. Bye.